right, so I'll turn it over to you ladies now.
Okay, great. So my name's Susan Patterson, and we have Sarah Musashi here as well. She'll be co-presenting. And our session is called Creating Language-Rich Lessons. So we are super excited to be here and hoping this tech, there we go, it's going to work. So our norms, I believe you guys have seen these in other sessions. So I believe everyone's muted and the video is off. Sarah Musashi will be monitoring the chat box. And then we have our hashtags here as well. So please share your experience. All right. So a little about us. I'm an ESL teacher currently, and I also peer coach, and it is a role I've been just loving, and I like to share it on my blog, and I like to share other strategies and coaching on there as well. I'm a mama to humans and fur babies, and that keeps me pretty busy. Sarah, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Musashi. I have been teaching ESL for, I believe it was 7 years, and I actually left the classroom last year to start serving as an instructional advisor for grades 6 through 12. I also teach a couple master's levels classes, one about ESL content methods, another is more of an intensive studies. And I actually just welcomed my first child this past September. His name is Zeke. And then we also, as you can see, have 2 dogs. And like Zeke said, I will be monitoring the chat. So at any point in time, if you have a question, I know there's quite a few of you in here, but please feel free to just go ahead and throw that in the chat. I will either answer it myself, or if I think it's a question that really Susan needs to answer for the whole group, I'll go ahead and wait for an appropriate time and pose it to her. So please don't hesitate to put any questions in the chat. I see one in there right now, and I'll go ahead and answer it. Go ahead, Susan.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Okay. So let's look at our objectives. Today we're going to understand why language is so important to learn with content. We're going to analyze the 3 levels of language and look at some tasks that go with it. And we're going to pull out some language in order to create a task that addresses the language levels. So our agenda, we're going to look at, first we need to really kind of dive in a little bit to language and content and teaching them simultaneously. We'll look at the levels, and then we'll do our tasks. So I have a bell work here. There's a QR code. Sarah informed me that this link may not be working. So if it doesn't, I believe she's posted it in the chat.
I just did.
Woohoo! All right. So here's our bell work, and you will answer this as a comment on the post in the Padlet. So you're going to write this sentence. Language is blank to content. So you've got a word bank, compared, contrasted, or linked. And then you're going to head over. So let me go ahead and minimize this and go here. Can everyone see this okay, the Padlet?
Yep, there we go.
All right. So I want to, while you guys are doing this bell work for just a little second here, go ahead and kind of, after you're done, just explore this Padlet quickly, because we've got a couple of tasks in here, but there's also a couple goodies for you guys to go back and explore. So I'm going to mention this language forms and functions document that you guys can go back and use. There's 5 easy ways to add language to a lesson, information about language levels, and also a fun little social media template that you can share or you can comment on in this post. So I'm seeing some answers. Yes.
Susan, we just got some great news that your QR code did work. So,
okay, good. Just the link.
That.
Okay. All right. So that was quick, guys. So let me go back to here. So I see most people answered linked, which is definitely correct. So we are off to a good start. Let's look a little bit further at teaching content and language together. So I'm not going to read this out loud to you, but I'd like you to take a minute to take this quote in from Jim Cummins. And after you read the quote, I want you to answer, what is the message or what is the author saying in this quote? And after you get your answer, I want you to type in the chat. You can use a sentence stem, the message is, or the author is saying, and let me know what you think. So let's just take a minute to do that now. So I can hear, I think, when people are putting things in the chat. Sarah, there are a couple answers so far.
So I haven't seen anything come through the chat yet. I did just post in there the sentence stems that you gave out for the participants to use. So just after you read the quote, using the stems, the author saying, or the messages, give your take on what Jim Cummins is saying.
Great. Thanks.
So, all right. So I see one coming through. The first participant, Miss Tamara, is saying the author saying that language and content instruction are not separate. They should be taught together. I'm seeing another, the message is language and content go hand in hand. Content and language depend on one another. They can be developed concurrently. Definitely a lot of similar responses coming through, Susan.
I like that. I like all of those. And yeah, they go hand in hand. They depend on each other. So those are some good paraphrases right there. Okay. So let's continue to the next slide here. So they do depend on each other because content is the what will students know, understand, or be able to do at the end of the lesson according to your standards? And then the language is how will students show they know or understand the standards? So the language is what delivers the content. So they have to go hand in hand together. All right. So academic language is the key. To deliver this content, students need academic language to be successful. So here's some, from Coloring Colorado, some main points for academic language. And these are definitely all relevant. The one that really always sticks out is the language of academic success and the language of power. And also they're not only using this in the classroom, they're going to take it with them in the workplace too. So this is the key, and this is what we need to be teaching our students. So the next question is, well, how do we address academic language in our lessons? So we need to address it at its different levels, the word, sentence, and discourse levels. So before we jump into these levels, I want you guys to type in the chat what content you teach and how you may be addressing academic language in your content area. So I'm not sure if we have all ESL teachers in here or if there's some other content areas. So I would love to know before we continue. So go ahead and type in the chat.
All right, so we have a K through 5 ESL teacher. Who else is here? Math, science, social studies.
Ooh, fun.
And 5th grade ESL teachers.
Perfect. I love that we have math and science. Did you say social studies?
Ooh, I love this. High school self-contained math, science, social studies with high school credential standards, lots more ESL, 5th grade Spanish, reading intervention, elementary ESL instructional coach. We have a good little variety in here right now.
This is great. Okay, I love this. Okay, good. And so for the science people, we have an example for you later too. So this is great. So really it doesn't matter what content you're teaching, you can take away from this and use it in your own lessons. So really, it's all about addressing our English learners in any classroom they're sitting in, right? Okay, so we're going to continue on. So we're going to review the different levels here. This is the word level. So as you're looking at this chart, I want you to think about what do you notice about it, or what stands out to you? And also think about words in your content area. What are some words you could address that are actually other than just the ones that are in your textbook, that are in bold or, at the bottom of the page? So what are some other words that you could be teaching your students to be successful? Because we want to teach those content words that are in bold, but we also really need to teach other words that students are going to need for their tasks.
So right now we have coming through multiple meaning words. And what I love is that, our participants right now are really using that chart. So specifically in looking at this word phrase dimension chart, what are you noticing about the types of words that students are being asked to use? Really utilizing that right-hand side of the chart.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I see cognates coming through.
Mm-hmm. Yes, those are so important. So yes, I think the key is to compare, the words in your textbook, yes, but to compare with all of these other examples on the right-hand side, like you said, Sarah.
So we have academic language that's used across the different content areas coming through.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. All right, so if there's no more, let's go ahead and continue to the sentence level, because I think you guys are really it sounds like you're looking at this chart on the right side.
We're seeing a couple more coming through, Susan. I see homophone, shades of meaning words, transition words, figurative language.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And I see that some of these things are dabbling into some of these other dimensions of language. So right now, coming some more of discourse, which is what we're going to get to. So for example, with that figurative language, transition words, that's getting into a little bit more specific domains of language. We're really focusing right here on what are those specific technical words, what are those specific content area, multiple meaning words.
Right. Okay. So I just want to ask real quick before we go on to the next slide. For those of you that are math or science or in a specific content area, what are some technical words that that you guys focus on in your class?
So I'm not seeing coming through the chat, anything coming through the chat yet, but Susan, I can point out on the chart here, we're specifically calling out some terms associated with math. So we have Pythagorean theorem in there. You have ratio. We're starting to see some things coming through the chat right now. Respiration. I see plan, which I believe planifica coming through.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, Angelica, could you give me a little more context on what subject area that's coming from? Multiple translated, it's a translated word, okay? Migrate in social studies and science.
Yes. Yes, okay. Good. So we have those. Those are the more, specific or technical words. And then I think that hopefully this session will help us broaden into, the multiple meanings and general words that are across content areas. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide here. So we have the sentence level. So while you're looking at this, after kind of reviewing through this chart at the sentence level, I want you to then look at your content area and think, okay, do I recognize some of these examples on the right-hand side? And how could you call attention to these structures during your lessons? Or how do you call attention to these in your lessons? So if I am a math teacher, and I might need to teach these connector words, consequently, then comparative structures like greater than. How are you teaching your students about these? Are you being explicit at all about teaching these? Or is that something that we need to, aspire to do this fall?
I see modeling, think alouds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's important to note here on the sentence dimension, Susan, when we're here, just as you're looking at the chart, go ahead and notice how the types of sentences that students are using are changing from subject to subject. So if you take a look over on the right, you'll see that there are different sentence structures that students are using, for example, in social studies than what they're using in math and maybe in science. So really focusing on more of that historical present in social studies. Also, really to support students' movement from entering levels to advanced in their language, we have to be super intentional about the grammatical structures that we're teaching and we're expecting our students to use. So y'all, look at this chart and think about it in terms of that word phrase level. What are you noticing about the differences? Susan, I'm seeing a few more answers coming through for your question. I see lots of visuals. People are doing explicit instruction with hands-on approach, manipulatives, using realia, lots of visuals. Lots of time breaking down academic vocabulary due to just a lack of available time in that regular classroom, TPR.
Yeah, I think the key is being explicit. And you know what, I can actually, on my phone, I'm seeing some comments come in too. But yeah, the key is to be explicit. And I know that sometimes we don't have enough time, in our math or science class. But I think too that taking just 5, maybe 10 minutes to explicitly say, okay, or teach these structures and have them practice for a minute would do, wonders. So, and I think that's where doing little mini lessons come in little mini grammar lessons, because we're all language teachers. So I like all of those responses so far, and the couple ones that I saw on my phone. Yeah, I see reading, math is a different ball game. I can't see that whole one, but yes, totally different ball game. And I do not know math at all. I can teach the language of math. Okay. So are we ready to kind of look at the next step, the discourse level here?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's one more thing that I would note about this sentence level right here is just notice that as you're looking from that word phrase dimension to the sentence dimension, you're really just working on moving students from more simple sentences to more complex.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So as you're moving through the language levels, you're moving them through, proficiency level too. You're building upon that language to get them stronger and ultimately be, close to a native speaker. Okay, so the discourse dimension. So discourse dimension, we're looking at writing and speaking as a whole. So we're looking at it all together, and so that means we're looking at the amount that they're writing, the structures, the density, and the cohesion. Does it all flow and make sense? Are they using different sentence types to form their text, or are they just using, simple sentences and it's super short, which, if they're newcomers or beginners, that might be okay. We just need to know what we're moving them up to, if that makes sense. So when you're doing the discourse level, or when you're looking at the discourse level and looking at your content area, we've got some good examples. So English, of course, narratives, expository essays, blogs, debates, word problems for math, explanations. So I know that math, that students have to explain and use a lot of language and write in math now, I think. Am I correct? Because still I'm not a math person. So while you're looking at the examples, think about what language would your students need to be successful in writing these examples. So to write an explanation in math, what is that language that they need to excel? So you're probably going to want to go back and think, okay, what did I explicitly teach them at the sentence level? And can they use it in their writing or their speaking? So that's just one example. But I think it's important just to go back to the question, what language do my students need to write or speak about these things or do these examples?
Absolutely. And Susan, if you don't mind me jumping in, at the discourse level, we really want to be thinking about students being able to connect to their ideas in logical ways. So earlier, I made a reference that one of your responses, it was transitional words. Earlier in the word dimension, I said, "Ooh, we're like touching a little bit more on discourse." Those transitional phrases would actually live more here in this discourse dimension because that's helping to ensure that they're connecting those ideas. At their developmental level, they're using a variety of sentence patterns as they're speaking and as they're writing. Like Susan said, the amount that students are saying or writing in order to move to a level 1 to level 5 matters. Discourse is also really considering the cohesion and the coherence of ideas that the student is trying to communicate. So we're looking at both how ideas are being organized and how they're being connected. So I hope that helps explain that just a little more.
I think so.
Susan, you have some really great things coming through the chat right here. I see that Jennifer is referencing math. just how in math, being able to describe what is happening in the problem,
Hmm.
and find that math in the real world, or justify their method beyond just because I said you should.
Right. And when you make it more about the real world, I think that they're more able to use language. They're more able to be like motivated to use the language that they know. I'm kind of reading Jennifer's on my phone. I only get half of it as it comes through, but yeah, I think that's great. Find the math in the real world. Okay, good. Yeah, and how she says, I just remembered I was going to say, how she says that they need to describe, then these levels are all connected, because then you go back to the word level and you think, okay, what words, do they need to describe? So what words should I have, taught them beforehand so that they can go back in their task and describe? So, okay. Let's move on. All right. So we've got a language check. And after the check, if you want to type in any extra questions in the chat, go ahead. So I'm going to go back to the Padlet here. So it should say language check number 1. And already received. Okay. So fill in the blank. Academic language includes the features of the blank, blank, and blank levels. And you've got a little visual there to help you out. Yep. Got it. I see my friend Tammy. And you know what I'm gonna pick on Tammy for a minute. Tammy, you know what I would do? Like if I was in my classroom, I would, and this is off topic of the language levels, but I would say, oh, you know what, guys? I see these answers are great. You are really getting it, but I really want you to answer in complete sentences, because you know what? When you get to the WIDA, that's what they're going to expect, right? So it's good to practice our complete sentences in speaking and writing. Tammy, don't kill me.
Even in the chat that she can take it.
All right, so I think everyone's kind of got the gist of it here. Are there any extra questions in the chat?
Susan, I haven't seen any questions coming through the chat. If I do, I will definitely stop you and let you know. I haven't seen any. Like I said, everyone, at the very beginning, please feel free to type any questions in there. I'm in there monitoring and answering questions as they come through.
Awesome. Super. Okay, well, then we will continue. So, okay, good. We know this information, but how do we put these in action, right? So we want to look at some example activities for your lesson plans. At the word level, we, first of all, we want to always teach words in context, right? We don't want to teach them separately, so we don't want to teach just Frayer cards during our whole lesson. We definitely want to mix them in with the other levels and our other tasks. So we've got Frayer cards here, and I think a lot of people should know about a Frayer card. And we've got, to teach multiple meanings, we've got a word wall, personal dictionaries, and I don't know if you guys have ever used the paint chips. They're kind of fun, but you can teach shades of meaning with the paint chips. And I think the key too, as we go into a more virtual world, is finding out ideas of how to teach these virtually too. All right. So let's go to the next one. All right, so frequently, especially with teachers maybe in other content areas or new teachers to ESL, I would get questions like, well, how do I know what words to teach? Because it's overwhelming, right? Especially for a beginner, oh my gosh, there's so many words that they need to know. So even myself, I can kind of get overwhelmed a lot of times. And I frequently go back to this information here from Dr. Steyer-Fenner. So she recommends to have students self-assess first, and then select words that are key or important to understanding that text, and you're pretty sure they're unfamiliar to students. They're frequently used, so they pop up a lot. They're used across disciplines, so we might see them in ELA, but we might also see them in math class. Multiple meanings, and they might have prefixes or suffixes. So I usually keep something like this up actually by my desk when I'm lesson planning. You might want to take a screenshot or take a picture with your phone too, because later on in the task, this might help you. All right. So here's some ideas for the sentence level. So to teach grammar, we can do that through doing sentence strips. Fluency and mechanics, we can do juicy sentences, which I've just been like on a kick of. I love doing juicy sentences. And that's a whole nother session. And also matching language forms to purpose. So you might want to look at the first person and have them rewrite in the third person. These are just some ideas.
Hey, Susan.
Hey.
Jump in real quick. Someone else named Susan was asking, would you mind just going back really quick? She was
sure.
Screenshot.
Sure, Susan. 1 second. There we go. All right. I see it. Thanks. Okay. I also saw teaching multiple grade levels is overwhelming. Oh, yes. Okay, let's go back. So these are just some ideas for you, which need a little bit of planning, but are really great activities to implement into your lessons here. So these can be part of your mini lessons. If you're doing like a mini lesson on a specific structure, you can do some of these activities here. Okay, so what sentence structures or grammar to teach? This is important. We don't want to just pull out a random structure. So you want to think about your purpose for students to understand the objectives and the standards. You also want to think about what proficiency level they are. And then this forms and functions chart is extremely useful. All of this information applies to the discourse level as well. So later on, you can go to the Padlet and open up that forms and functions chart. And it'll really guide you with what to focus on. All right. So examples for discourse level, of course, essays, and you might want to use paragraph frames to help them organize their text. I really love storyboards. So storyboards are great for actually all levels, beginners to advanced, because you can really scaffold it. Like with more advanced learners, you can ask them to write more in their caption, or ask them to write more complex sentences in their captioning. And it's really a great way for them to practice their art skills. I've seen some amazing art from storyboards. All right. I think we're jumping in pretty soon. Sarah, I'm going to let you do this slide here for opportunities for practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So when thinking about incorporating the word sentence discourse level across our domains, we have to be, just in general, super intentional about incorporating reading, writing, speaking, and listening into our daily lesson in order to ensure that our students are actually receiving a balance of practice with that receptive and productive language. And you can see here that receptive language are those listening and reading skills, really how we're taking in information, whereas that speaking and writing, that's that productive language, what we're using to actually produce. And so we as teachers have to be super intentional in planning to ensure that we're weaving in these different levels of language together in order to move students towards more advanced levels of discourse. Because remember, this word sentence discourse, these aren't taught in isolation. I'm not teaching my students, I'm not teaching them at the word level because I know that they're a beginner, and so that's where I'm going to live. I'm going to intertwine all of these skills into my lessons. And so when I'm looking at this chart right here, what it's actually doing is it is just giving you examples of different ways that you can weave in these different levels of language throughout the 4 domains to really push your students towards those strong levels of discourse. So you'll see across that listening and reading, you have some examples of completing graphic organizers while listening or while they're reading to track author's purpose. But really, when I'm thinking about, okay, it's easy to think about in speaking and writing how we're really going to push them towards discourse, because that's really where we know that discourse lives. But when thinking about, okay, well, what am I going to do to support my students to get there? That's where I'm thinking about within listening and reading. What am I really providing my students before they complete the task? What supports am I giving them to support those structures and support those language demands that the students need at the speaking and writing level? So, for example, how I said completing that graphic organizer while listening to a podcast, that might be preparing my students to then later write a summary of that podcast. So when I'm thinking about how can I move students across language within all 4 domains, in thinking about that listening and reading, I really think about what am I really doing here to support my students in that productive language.
I love that, Sarah, and how you said it, and I'm nerding out right now because I'm like thinking about if I'm a content teacher, okay, I might have a beginner in class, or like the person said, I think that she said she had multiple proficiency levels. So it's thinking about how, like, it's putting this information together with, okay, what supports do I use, and what are the scaffolds I can use to move them from the word to the sentence level? Because you're right, we don't want to stay in the word level. We're going to push them, and we're going to push them by giving them sentence stems and a word bank, right? And they can do, because I have heard some teachers say, my students can't do that, right? Yes, they can. They can do the discourse level. They can do speaking and writing, that productive language, but you've got to give them, those supports. And that's a whole nother topic is, scaffolding. But I love this. I love how you put it, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions coming in about this slide?
I haven't seen any questions come through, but I did see that one of our participants, Angelica, was just providing some input of providing multimodal and multi-genre texts on different levels for students as one of the ways to support them.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes. Okay, good. I love that response. All right, let's move on, because I know we're going to still do our tasks, and we are It's at 11:25. So, okay. So what we're going to do is we've actually got 2 tasks. And the first task, let's look at this together. So this is an example student task. So after reading the passage, students will outline the dangers that eutrophication can cause to marine life. So let's look at the passage. So together we're going to analyze this practice science ACT item, which we know can be rather dense, right? The ACT items. So I want you guys to read it alone, but if I was doing this in my class, I'd probably do a masterful read for them, and then have them read in partners and then do a silent read. But I want you guys to read this to yourself, and then we will continue. And so as you're reading, I want you to also be thinking about what language you may be seeing that needs to be pulled out. Okay. So we're going to do this one together. I'm going to go ahead and show you the next couple of slides real quick. So you should be asking yourself as you're reading, what language will students need at the word, sentence, and discourse level? So just to get you started a little bit, I pulled out multiply and algae at the word level. At the sentence level, causality, prepositional phrases. And at the discourse level, cause and effect. So of course there are more, but quick question, why would I pull out multiply at the word level? Answer in the chat. Why would I pull out multiply?
So I see you used across disciplines because it's used in multiple content areas.
Yes. Okay, good. What about algae? So if I go back up here, why did I pull out algae from this passage?
I see shades of meaning. Let me see. Irregular plural. It's specific to this passage and used multiple times.
Yes.
Doesn't follow phonetic principles. I'm sorry, phonetic.
Yeah.
The text.
So thinking about what Dr. Diane Sayer-Fenner says, I pulled it out, because it shows up more than once in the passage, and students will need to know this word to understand the passage as a whole.
Absolutely.
So, while we're, I'm sorry, what did you say, Sarah?
Sorry, Susan.
Oh, you're fine.
Jump in really quick and say, in addition, that word algae, if you go back one slide, that word algae is really going to be essential. You know, I see lots of people saying it's been used multiple times, but that word algae is going to be essential for students to complete this task. So when we're walking through these levels of language, we really want to be thinking about, yes, the text, but also what is the task that my students are being asked to complete. And so I know that in terms of the word level, what are those words that my students will need to know in order to be successful with this task?
Yes. definitely. And yeah, we see, okay, marine life. Yes, they need to know about algae, right? So are there any other words that you guys, or any other words or sentence structures or discourse that students would need to know to do the task here?
All right. I see another word, cause. It's a verb and a noun.
Oh. Yeah, and also
Marine and algae both have to do with water. It's very important to this topic.
mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And marine and algae both, again, those are going to be essential for students answering that question or outlining really what is the cause for marine life and that eutrophication.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
What about at the sentence level? I would love to hear, like, what are some other things at the sentence level that you would really need to make sure that you're teaching your students in order for them to be successful with this task? If you know that they're using cause and effect, if you know they're outlining dangers of eutrophication, what kinds of things at the sentence level are you really needing to teach your students? Yeah, so I'm seeing passive voice. I'm seeing if-then statements leading to. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely needing to teach some of these signaling words that are going to show students that cause and effect relationship here.
Mm-hmm.
Are those words that are indicating causality?
Definitely.
Types of sentences, complex, compound complex, excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So I'm going to go ahead and look at some other things that I put. And, I think with pulling out things, sometimes we might not pull out the same words, and especially when we're thinking about our own students in mind. So I also pulled out dense and densities, ecosystem, I think someone said nutrients, phytoplankton, but at the sentence level, I'm thinking of my beginners. I put in there is and are, but if they're more advanced, I'm thinking about having them analyze the difference between using is and are with linking verbs versus a past participle. And also at discourse level, yeah, we have cause and effect, but also the task says outlining, right? And when we think about outlining, what other language do students need in order to complete an outline and have cohesion? So when you think about cohesion and fluency, what other types of words will students need to know? Any ideas?
I'm not seeing. Oh, yes. Jennifer, you are saying exactly what I was about to jump in and say. She stole it.
Woohoo!
It's transition words.
Woohoo! Yep. Transition words, exactly. So that's going to definitely be at the discourse level because it helps with that cohesion and fluency. Yep. All right. So since we have 10 minutes left, I have one more task, but I want to ask you guys how you feel. How do you feel about trying this alone, or do we need more practice together? So in the chat, can you put like a smiley face for yes or a sad face for no, so we know? How do you feel about doing this alone?
Susan, I am not going to moderate every smiley or sad face that comes through here, but I will tell you that as of right this second, we have a majority of smiley faces coming through.
Okay. Okay.
And lots of smileys.
Okay, smileys. All right, here we go. Okay, so this next task, after reading the passage, students will outline the nesting cycle for sea turtles. So here is your passage. This is a 3rd grade ELA passage. So go ahead and read this to yourself. And then again, think about what language they're going to need at those different levels to really comprehend that passage. And so you might want to, I don't know if you have some paper near you, but you might want to jot down some notes, and then we're going to put it in our Padlet. So let's just take just a couple more seconds and we will move on to the task. I see Sarah's added the Padlet link again. Okay. So let's go ahead. You guys can go ahead. Actually, let me show you this first. Okay, this is our task directions. You're going to go to the Padlet, find the academic language task, and you're going to comment with what you would focus on in your lessons at the word, sentence, and discourse level. So I think I actually have it copied and pasted in there, but I'm going to leave this up for you guys as well. And let's just take a couple minutes to add your answers in. So let's take about 1 more minute here, just for time. If you guys want, you can always return to this Padlet, do some practice on your own. Okay, I've got it pulled up on my phone. I see some people commenting. So we've got some words, that's good. So what about at the sentence and discourse level? And you guys might still be kind of thinking and trying to pull things out, and that's okay. But, okay, I see some more. I'm going to go ahead, again, for time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and show you what I pulled out, and I think that you guys pulled out some similar things. So at the word level, eggs, hatch, predators, frenzy, turtle digs, newborn, avoid. I specifically liked newborn because that's one that they will see in other places. At the sentence level, introductory phrases, if-then statements, commas in a series. Because if you look at the discourse level, we're going to be looking at sequencing, and they're going to be outlining. So they will need to know how to do if-then statements. They will need to list things for commas in a series. So I'm seeing some more comments here. Did anyone get any other ideas here with this task before we kind of move on to reflection and close out? Okay, I see phrases in here too. Weeks later. Sequence words, first, next, last. Yep. All right. So for time, do we have any questions about this task? Because I know that I know that was kind of quick and we're about to wrap it up. So in the chat, type any questions you may have, but I want to look at this reflect slide here. So now that you know the language that needs to be taught and you know what language needs to be pulled out, from the activity ideas we learned, what are some that you could implement when school starts? So what tasks could you create when school starts? And how would this look virtually? So go ahead and type in the chat. Your reflections. And I'm going to kind of share with you guys, I was kind of reflecting myself how to teach some of these things virtually. Any more ideas would be so welcome, but I thought about having a virtual word wall in each lesson, having a Google Drive folder for individual students, Freyr's cards or personal dictionaries, possibly doing a sentence strips activity for about me or getting to know me at the beginning of the year. And I know there's a lot of good information about how to make things movable and for students to move things around in Google Slides. So that would be something fun. Now I haven't tried it yet, but these are my ideas. So Sarah, if there's any more ideas.
I actually see one coming through from Betsy that I love, a visual word wall linked to visual, audio, and video supports.
Ooh, I love that. I don't know who said that, but I'm going to write it down from my own notes.
That was from Betsy.
Thank you, Bethany. Link visual word wall. I love that. So we've got 1 minute left, and I would love for you guys to continue to share your ideas. So if you have any questions beyond this session, you can scan this QR code to contact me, or Sarah's going to put in my email in the chat. And if you have any ideas you want to share, I would love to hear them because we're just all learning here and this is all new territory. So if I'm going to go ahead and stop talking. So if there's any questions before we wrap it up, Sarah, let me know.
Yeah, I haven't seen any other questions come through the chat, but I'm happy to stay and just ensure that there aren't any other questions. Otherwise, like Susan said, I did put her email address in the chat, so please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I see. Thanks, Elizabeth, for your comment. Yeah, all right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope that you guys can take away some things or even share it with your content teachers too. All right.
All right, awesome. And as a reminder, I'm going to post here in the chat box the link to the EL acquisition webpage where you can download a copy of Sarah and Susan's presentation. And also a recording of this session will be posted there later on today in case you missed something.
Thank you.
All right. So this was fantastic. Well, thank you so much again, ladies. This absolutely amazing resources and some great information. Very helpful.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So I'm actually going to stop the recording.
All right.
Give me one moment.
Houston,
All
thanks
right.
for being here to troubleshoot all the tech.